I've said in the past that I generally speaking prefer the DC movies to the Marvel movies because while the DC movies are mostly horrible, and I mean really, really bad, they're bad in a fascinating way. Like, I could write a book about how bad Suicide Squad was and like just go through like every bad decision, like every bad characterization where the plot made no sense, just how horrible that movie was. And the same thing for Justice League. These are just truly horrific movies. Whereas with Marvel movies, I find them to be just the most bland, focus group, mass produced product of a film I've ever seen in my life. There's like, as with DC movies, there's a couple I like, but mostly they're just the blandest things possible. And that brings us to Birds of Prey. Now, I didn't want to see this movie. I was actually not going to go see it, but a friend of mine really wanted to see it. And he's like, Argent, we got to go see Birds of Prey. I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, come on, it'll be funny. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go see Birds of Prey. Maybe this will be like Suicide Squad Part 2. Because Suicide Squad was the hardest I'd ever laughed watching a movie in theaters. I had seen it with the same friend actually, and I almost like I actually started crying. I was laughing so hard watching Suicide Squad. We thought we were going to get kicked out. So I'm like, okay, let's go watch Birds of Prey. I had a coupon, so I wasn't paying for it directly. And this film is kind of like a Buddhist cone because it's horrible, it's horrendous, but it's so bad, it's actually not interesting. It's actually just boring. Like, it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. But when I was watching it, I didn't feel disgust or revulsion or like anything like that. I just felt this like emptiness within me. I just like I think I tried to fall asleep a couple times. I was just so disengaged and just like bored. Like, there's films I've watched, like when I watched Kick Ass 2, I found that film to be extremely abrasive and offensive to my senses. Like, I actually almost walked out of it a couple of times. I just thought it was so like bad. And then The Last Jedi was like I almost walked out of that. Well, not maybe not The Last Jedi so much as The Force Awakens was really hard for me to stay there. And then there was stuff like The Rise of Skywalker where I felt physically ill for most of the film. And there's been like movies that are just like really slow and plotting. But this film just failed to connect with me on such a basic, like human level. It was kind of fascinating. And like I could sit here and I can rant about the feminism and I can rant about how the casting was shit and it like how politically correct and social justice this film was. And that's all true, but at the end of the day, I couldn't bring myself to care enough to be angry. Like when I was watching Knives Out, Knives Out is a good movie, and the political subcontext they put in irritates me because I like the movie other than that, and that impacted my enjoyment of it. In this film, I like didn't even crack a smile. Like nothing about it like entertained me. Nothing about it even disgusted me. It's like, how could something have this little impact? It's kind of like a Buddhist cone, where it's like, it's like I guess it's kind of like Nirvana. Like, you've gone through the worst shit possible, and you just feel completely detached from reality. And that was like what this movie was like. And it's hard for me to like even know where to begin. Like, do I talk about the plot? Do I talk about the characters? Do I talk about all this kind of horrible stuff? But nothing like made an impact. There was not a single redeemable or enjoyable thing about this movie. Like, I can think of some bad movies. I thought Miami Vice was pretty bad. Actually, all of Michael Mann's movies are pretty bad, other than I guess Heat. But that movie has like the informant death scene. That film has like a lot of funny shit in it. I've made some memes out of it. I thought Cowboys and Aliens was like one of the single worst films I've ever seen. But you have that scene with like Harrison Ford holding the knife, and it was just like the most lame, like horrific thing. Like, it was just the worst, most phoned in thing I've ever seen. And to this day, I still crack up just thinking about it. Like there's like the Hip Hop Witch, which is probably the worst movie I've ever seen, at least before watching this. But it's at least like it's got that scene with Eminem where he's like taking acid and they like films him just talking about the witch. He just starts screaming. Like even a movie called The fucking Hip Hop Witch that's like a parody of the Blair Witch Project. Like even that has something redeemable. This film has nothing redeemable about it. Like it's not even like I. How'd you even criticize it? Like to a certain extent, you criticize something because to a certain extent you like it. I criticize movies because I like movies. I criticize video games because I like them. I want them to be better. I want them to do better. But in this case, like I'm just sitting here struggling to even put a review together. Um, I don't know if people want to put in the comments if they want me to try to go through the plot of this film and like maybe do some more specific criticisms I can. But it's like, why even bother? Okay, maybe I'll just talk a bit about why this film's so bad. To me, okay, so here's my biggest complaint. You have a exploitation R-rated film, but it fails in like the sexploitation department. It's like at least with like bad horror movies, they often will have at least hot girls to look at. Like they'll have some like actress they were able to hire for cheap because it's like her first role and she'll be really cute and you can at least look at her. And that's like with like a lot of these terrible movies, like there's at least something, but you don't even get that in this movie. Margot Robbie is an attractive woman, but she looks like complete crap done up as Harley Quinn. Um, Mary Elizabeth Winstead isn't a bad looking woman, but she looks absolutely horrendous as Huntress. Black Canary has been transformed from being an Aryan goddess into being, yeah, the less said about that, the better. Um, I think Cassandra Cain is supposed to be kind of cute, but they got like this ugly fat girl to play her who had zero charisma. So, like, you have an all female superhero team, and they're all like unattractive and hideous. And it's just like, why? They couldn't even get that right. They couldn't even give me like something aesthetically pleasing to look at when they were making this film. And it's like, I think to me that just kind of illustrates just how bad a job they did on this movie. Um, and like, maybe just talk about some random shit. One of the weird things about this film is it doesn't really feel like a superhero movie. Like, the only time a superpower is used in the entire film is near the end when Black Canary uses her scream, but no one else in this movie has superpowers. Everyone else just uses like guns or beats people up or something. Like Huntress, I don't think has superpowers in the comics. I think she's just a badass. And she was, I guess, the only thing I almost kind of liked in this movie because she kind of was cool with her crossbows. But they made her shit too. So like it comes out of nowhere and it just feels really like out of place in a film with no supernatural aspects to just kind of put it in. And like that's just kind of like I guess kind of a tiny example of how little thought was put into this movie. And I guess like when we're talking about like low points of this film, other than I think Harley Quinn had sex with a hyena, I'm not really sure. It was kind of hard to follow. But Ewan McGregor did the worst performance of his entire career. Now I like Ewan McGregor. I think he did an amazing job as Obi-Wan. A lot of his other performances I've liked. Like The Island, he was pretty good in Angels and Demons, even if the movie was kind of mediocre. He's not a bad actor. He's been in a number of like decent movies, but in this he just was unbelievably horrific. He plays this character Roman Sionis, otherwise known as Black Mask, and like he just yells a lot and like I don't know if he's supposed to be like metrosexual or gay or whatever, but he has like Zaz, like Victor Zaz, who's just like his body man, like his partner in crime and in other things. and it's just cringe. Like, he doesn't have any superpowers other than the fact that he wears a black mask. But I think that's his superpower. He doesn't like. He's not a good fighter. He doesn't have any like obvious meta-human powers. It's just like he just choose. No, he doesn't even choose scenery. He's not even like funny. He's not even like over the top. He's not like Venger or like Dio and JoJo, like who are just like over the top, hammy, but like hilarious. It's not even that. He's just a little bitch who just whines, and we have just really gory scenes of him torturing people. But it's not funny. It's not like intimidating. It's not scary. It's just lame. It's like I'm trying to think like what's the closest to the feelings I had while watching this movie. Um, Maybe the final episode of Game of Thrones, although I actually cared about what happened. But just in terms of how little effort was put into this film, just in terms of how little they like gave like a shit about the audience, like they like it just it doesn't seem like I don't know. It's the most phoned in thing I've ever seen in my life. This is the probably the worst movie I've ever seen. Like even something like Manos: The Hands of Fate at least had Torgo. At least like you could make jokes about it. I don't even know how I'd make fun of this movie. I don't even know how I'd take a crack at it. Like it's just oh fuck me. All I have to say is fuck this movie. I regret that I saw it, but I guess I had to bear witness. It's probably one of the seven signs of the fucking apocalypse.